Hello and welcome to the Southern Star's Coronavirus podcast. I'm the news editor Siobhan Cronin.
And I'm Southern Star Creative Manager Niall.
And each week on our podcast, we talk to people at the centre of the COVID-19 pandemic in West Cork and beyond. We will also take a look at that week's newspaper and how our reporters are covering the pandemic and some other news too.
We have a very special musical treat this week, Siobhan, from Mary Black of all people, with some help from local man Bill Shanley.
Right.
And we also speak to Bill Shanley. He's a musician and producer with 30 years. He speaks to us about the state of the music industry at the moment during the pandemic and what the outlook is for the future. So, will we look at this week's paper, Siobhan?
Yes, Niall, on page 1 this week we have what I think is an exclusive story by Jackie Keogh about the old convent in Skibbereen, which I think is probably a feature of your own youth in the town. Was it? You'd know that building well. Very
Yes.
imposing and quite iconic up on the North Street end of town. And the man who would be known in the news as being behind the controversial Parishes direct provision centre down at the Skellig Star Hotel, he is actually involved with the company who have applied for planning permission for the convent in Skibbereen. So I suppose there was a lot of conjecture that perhaps this was going to be a direct provision centre as well. It would certainly be suitable accommodation-wise when it's renovated, but he is denying strenuously that is his plan, and he hasn't said exactly what the plan is, but that it will be an accommodation centre of some shape or form. He also mentions that maybe approaching local social groups like the Skibbereen Geriatric Society and anybody else who'd like to make use of it. So that's just an interesting story. I suppose another take on that. Remcol is the name of that company.
It'd be lovely to see the building developed anyway, because it's been left in such ruin at this stage, I suppose. Assuming that the purpose was a good one and all that, it would be great to see it done up on the entrance to town. It would be fantastic.
Absolutely.
There's a lovely photograph of Councillor Declan Hurley.
That's right. And his wife, and they had a new baby boy just last week. And they haven't named him yet because they're saying they're waiting to see what kind of personality he has. They have a few ideas, but they want to just see what jumps out of them after, I suppose, a few weeks with the little lad. And it's a gorgeous picture. And the full story is inside on page 3 by Jackie Keogh as well.
I'm told by my own parents that I was nameless for a week when I was a kid. So,
and you've had several names since then, Niall.
Yeah, indeed.
Not all good.
On page 2, there's a very interesting story about I think 6 swimmers that were rescued on Wednesday of this week.
Yes, well, this story happened just as we were going to press this week, and we had heard that there was an incident in Inchydoney, all right. So 4 young lads, I think they were from Macroom originally, the Macroom area, had gone swimming in Inchydoney and had got into trouble, I think, over on the far side, as we'd say, the far beach, I suppose, from the hotel. And there are quite notorious rip tides and currents there. So they got into trouble. I think one of them slipped. The others went to help. You know, it's a very common story now, unfortunately, how people get into trouble. But luckily for them, 2 women in the area were both involved with West Cork Surf Lifesaving. Wow. And they were surfing at the time, and they were able to, basically paddle out and get them back in safely. And they were helped then when they got to shore by other people who were on the beach at the time. Now, it just so happened that about an hour later, 2 teenage girls got into difficulty off Glandore. There was 3 of them had gone for a swim, 2 sisters and a friend. And one of the sisters and the friend got into difficulty. Now, there's just a dispute whether they were rescued or whether they made their own way back. I know they did have to clamber across some rocks to get to a safe spot. So the emergency services have just come out and they've said, look, please be careful. The weather's getting good. The June bank holiday is now upon us. Take care out there. But the most important thing they were saying was that the rescue services aren't actually kicking into gear until this weekend. Because they don't, this is the normal time now for a lot of the lifeguards, which are now called beach guards, I think, beach guards, and a lot of the volunteer lifeboat crew don't actually start working full time until this weekend. So just be careful out there.
And I think also the message is obviously to keep within the 5-kilometre restriction, and I think they're also afraid that people are now going to places that they wouldn't ordinarily swim in, or that may not be, with beach guards or lifeguards on them. So just be careful of that, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't see the real value of the 5K limit, but this is exactly an example of it, because it's diverting emergency services personnel to incidents which they shouldn't be needed at, and they may be needed, back at base.
Sure.
I think there was at least one ambulance, if not more, in Inchydoney yesterday, and quite a number of RNLI crews, and I think even the helicopter from Shannon was dispatched. So just to bear that in mind, that really is why we have that 5K rule.
There's a lovely photograph on page 2. It was the winner of a journalism award, taken by a local lady, I think.
Yes, Therese Gavin and the News Brands of Ireland, which is the umbrella body for national newspapers, hold these student journalism awards every year, and it's very often TY, transition year students. So we actually had 2 West Cork winners this year. So one was a TY student from St Mary's in Macroom, Therese Gavin, and she took a lovely photograph when she was in Manchester about a year ago of her relations, and one is her grand aunt and uncle, Mary and John Deneen, and they're all congregated around a phone looking at it as if they're trying to figure out what's on it. She said she wasn't quite sure what they were doing. They were looking at an app or something, and they all look very confused. There's 5 of them kind of converged in on the phone. And it's just a brilliant kind of picture of how some people, I suppose, get a bit stressed about modern technology. But as well as that, another lady, Maeve Connell from Clonakilty Governor in Ballyvorney, won the first prize in the feature writing category. And we're actually publishing that full story, which is a lovely read, on page 12 this week.
Brilliant. Page 10, actually, there's very interesting piece anyway. Something that's getting me through this whole pandemic anyway is podcasts, and there's a nice feature on what people from the area and previous interviewees on the podcast are listening to.
Yes, it was just an idea we had, because sometimes when we finish an interview on this podcast, we have a little chat with people afterwards, and the whole idea of it's kind of like the rebirth of the podcast, I suppose. It's a relatively new phenomenon, but it's been around, I don't know, 8-10 years now. But in its present form, everybody seems to know now what a podcast is. They've had to learn in the pandemic, because everyone's out walking and cycling and listening on their earphones. So we contacted a few of our guests just to see what they listen to when they're not listening to the Southern Star Coronavirus podcast. And Brian O'Donovan actually had the same choice I would have had if he hadn't stolen it first. But The Daily, which is the New York Times podcast, which comes out every single day, and it very often is about the pandemic, other times not. It can be something as simple as they had one a few weeks ago on how to make the perfect cup of tea, which I thought was brilliant. And then they had an interview with Dr. Fauci, basically America's Dr. Tony Holden. Yeah. So that's a really good podcast. Christopher O'Sullivan likes the Irish Times one, Inside Politics, and he also made reference to West Cork, the famous Audible podcast about the Sophie Toscan de Plantier case.
Sure.
And we also asked some of our own presenters on this podcast for their own. So I think, Niall, you chose Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin, which you've since turned me on to now, and I'm also a fan.
Yeah, highly recommended. It's actor and comedian Alec Baldwin interviewing all sorts of people, probably mostly actors and people from the arts community, but he also speaks with politicians, journalists. There's some very interesting ones, again, about maybe the situation in America during the coronavirus, but it's not all that. It's been running for a few years, so there's a lot of good stuff in there. It's really interesting.
Right. And also, I just to mention there, Father Tom Hayes was a guest in one of our earlier podcasts, and a very popular podcast, actually. It was one of our highest rated ones. And he mentions one that I actually found quite good too, which is the Harbour Parishes podcast. And it's 2 priests from West Cork who are they were cocooned over in Monkstown and Passage West, and they were just every week they put up a podcast just about how they were coping really in isolation, in fact. And I really enjoy that now. And now they're coming out a bit more. They're getting to see a bit more of the world. And it's just a lovely, quite a spiritual podcast, really, and a bit of a counterbalance to some of the more political ones out there.
There's a nice story, Siobhan, about, I guess, the generations in Bantry House.
Yes, it's a quirky one from Jackie Keogh, and it's a picture story, really, I suppose you could say. It's little Jacob, and Jacob is only 9 years old, but they have a little picture of him when he was even a little bit younger. And he is the great grandnephew of the 4th Earl of Bantry. So this is the family that have owned that estate, Bantry Estate, going right back to the 1800s or even previous to that. I think I know that William, who is the great granduncle, inherited Bantry Estate in 1884. And there's a picture of Jacob and a picture that they found of his ancestor with a painting, I presume it was going back that far, but they're actually remarkably similar. Beautiful little blonde curled hair and gorgeous little cherubic kind of face. And I suppose that's something it's a story you really need to see to understand it. But it's a really quirky, lovely little story about the family there in Bantry.
And I see, of all people, Leonardo DiCaprio makes our business page this week.
He does, a lovely big picture of Leo himself. And this is a lovely story about a Carrigaline man, Tom Cotter, who has invented an eco-friendly, reusable face mask with filters. And he is very much of the mind that he wants to, make sure that these, he's not just making total profit from these. So €2 from the proceeds of every mask will go to the Irish Lung Fibrosis Association. But it also has been picked up, the company has been supplying luxury resorts like the Four Seasons and Richard Branson's luxury resort, Necker Island, with sustainable clothing and accessories. So now this is just another step, I suppose, for them into producing the masks. And they've already had the backing of Leonardo DiCaprio, who I think most people know is a massive environmental activist in the US. So that's a really big thumbs up from them. So it's nice to see Leonardo DiCaprio on our business pages this week.
And speaking of things kind of, environmental, or as you mentioned it there, some strange kind of things happening in the Skibbereen environment recently. A dinosaur has been sighted in the area, I think.
Yes, a dinosaur. Apparently this T-Rex has broken out of the Lesage estate outside Skibbereen. And he was spotted shopping and social distancing in fields. And
I think social distancing from a T-Rex wouldn't be a problem.
Exactly. But this guy looks rather cuddly and cute, and he might be the huggy type, I think, judging by him. But it's just, there's a really lovely video on our Facebook page of him doing his shopping in Field Super Value in Skibbereen and picking quite a lot of toilet rolls, I noticed. And it's just, if you have smallies in the house and you want something quirky to show them, and especially if they're familiar with Fields, I think they'll get a real kick out of this. So just go to the Southern Star Facebook page and scroll down a few stories, and you'll find Rex on his shopping trip in Skibbereen.
No, it's not quite Jurassic Park comes to West Cork, but it's close enough.
Close enough. It's the soft, cuddly version.
Great.
So thanks, Niall. And don't forget, if you can't get to the shops, you can subscribe online by going to southernstar.ie and clicking on the e-paper tab at the top of your screen. You can also call our office on 028 212 00 for a postal copy to be sent out to you.
In this week's interview, I speak to Clonakilty's Bill Shanley, a renowned session musician, producer and composer of over 30 years. He's now based in Dublin, and he was speaking to me from his home there. He's played all over the world with the likes of Mary Black, Paul Brady, Ray Davies of the Kinks, no less, and Gilbert O'Sullivan. And he gives me his views on the state of the music industry at the moment due to the COVID lockdown, with no gigs or anything like that happening, and his views towards the future as regards what might happen. It's actually, he's quite positive about the whole thing in one sense, and it's a very interesting interview, so please enjoy. So we're joined by Bill Shanley from Clonakilty originally, and now Dublin-based, professional guitar player with 30 years, I think, Bill, is that correct?
It is. It is actually 30 years this... I finished my Leaving Cert 30 years ago in 1990, and I moved straight to Dublin the July of that year. So 30 years this year.
Wow! And you had your first kind of professional gig with Liam O'Reilly of Bagatelle. Is that correct?
Liam O'Reilly, that's absolutely right. I got friends of mine down in Clonakilty said there's an audition going in Dublin, and I was literally finished school, so I was like, okay. So I went up to Lytton Lane and did an audition one Saturday morning. And I think maybe a couple of days then I was literally on the bandwagon.
Brilliant.
That was 30 years ago.
Brilliant. And I mean, you've gone on since. I mean, you've earned a name, you know, as a studio musician and a live player with acts like Mary Black, Paul Brady. You've done a lot of work with Ray Davies, the Kinks, and Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I have. Yeah. I've had a good run of it, Niall. I've
Yeah.
had a very good run of it. I suppose I've worked hard at it. I've kept busy. You know, I've made it I suppose a profession for myself, or a job basically.
Sure, brilliant. And I mean, it's seen you travel the world with these acts as well. So you've that's an added bonus to all this, isn't it?
Do you know what? It's been great. And this first time, this last couple of months, it's been stopped and shut in a very sort of, I suppose, retrospective time. Just all these memories of you know, Chicago, or you know, where in normal times you're moving forward, you're on to the next thing, and you don't really think back. And this time is a sort of a time where you take stock, and you have time and attention to think back and I was there. And it's not something that I put effort into. It's just like these memories just fling back. And so I have traveled a lot, and I'm very, very grateful for that. I've had a lot of fun with it, you know.
So I suppose to your point, that has, I mean, the past, for all of us, I suppose, really, but the past number of months has been quite a culture shock. But how has the lockdown been? I mean, for yourself and your family, you have 3 young children and stuff.
For me, I see the positives in it. Family time has been great. Brilliant. Like my kids are 7, 10, and 12, and we've had 2 birthdays over lockdown. They're great kids, and we've been doing school at home, which I enjoy, and they've sort of enjoyed. So we've kept sort of a structure there. We've had lots of fun. We live by a great park. They've been doing lots of baking. We've been lots of really good family time. I think from their point of view, they miss their kids, they miss their school, and Lily, my oldest girl, is finishing national school. So that's probably the biggest thing for her and for us, is the fact that she doesn't get to finish off her school, and she goes off into another school in another location, stuff like that. That was probably done. We've had a good time of it. We've kept busy sort of work-wise, balancing work between lots of great family time and that. So it has been a big stop, but
sure.
Yeah.
But as you say, you're taking the positives out of it anyway.
Very much. Yeah, very much.
And if you weren't locked down, I mean, given the fact that you do tour a lot and you travel a lot, had you something on the books for right now? Where should you have been, or what should you have been doing?
I did. The day before lockdown more or less happened, or a few days before, we were rehearsing actually here, literally locally in Donnybrook. I set it up in Bective, actually, in the rugby club with Mary Black, and we were literally the next day kicking off an Irish tour.
Right.
And we were going to the concert hall the following week with the National Concert Orchestra, or Symphony Orchestra, sorry.
Oh.
And we were out for about 2 weeks, so that got stopped. Then the next month, April, I was heading to the States for a big tour with Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Wow, okay.
Which was his first tour there in 40 years, which we'd sort of worked and we'd set up, and we'd sort of done a few shows there last year. He'd big number ones there back in the 70s.
This tour, it was just yourself and himself, is that right?
Just the 2 of us.
Wow,
yeah. It's been going really well. So that got pulled. That was April. May this month, I would have been going to Japan now.
Wow.
With Gilbert. There's lots of stuff over the summer. There's like Doolin Festival with Mary Black in June, and lots of festivals of that. I think we're going to do the concert with Paul Brady in August. The concert is closed. So all that. So the summer, right up to the end of the summer's gone. But now the rest of the year really is gone. Like autumn stuff, I had stuff for Amsterdam, and the end of August, that's pulled as well. Sure. So really, with this, I think realistically, the shows I'm doing are quite big. So in terms of their theatres, there has to be time to sell tickets, time to promote it. Sure. So basically, this year is gone. It's gone, and January next year is quiet anyway. So it'll be February, March, touch wood, where the conference, the
sure.
All that comes back. That's our industry. That's what we need. We need people close and together and having fun, and it will come back. You know, as part. You know, if you know, we're one area of music, but restaurants, bars, you know, sport.
Sure.
The world operates to a big degree of people being huddled together. So
And
look, let the science and let the medical side of it figure
sure.
itself out, and then we'll jump back in as fast as we
But
can.
I suppose it is. I mean, just because it's your area of expertise, I suppose, or whatever. It's the whole lockdown thing is. It's having a remarkable effect on. Remarkable might be the wrong word. On the broader, like you're talking about venues, you're talking about lighting technicians, you're talking about, and it's not just music, as you say. It's any sort of performing arts, I suppose, really. And that's a whole range of people that are out of work and may not have an avenue to.
It really is. Look, I know there's many professions that hurt, but particularly say in the music business. So to give you a bit of an overview, in our business, yes, like there's people that go out and all they do is tour. Like they don't work in studios, they don't work, but what they might be production managers or they might be lighting designers. So they're dependent on shows. That's their expertise. And like I spoke to a friend of mine that I work with Ray Davies, and he's also out with Mark Knopfler for many years, and so we just spoke the other day just to see how everything was going, and he was saying like that he'll have to look at diversifying. Like he's very highly skilled as a production manager. He's absolutely top guy, but he said, look, there's he's going to have to look at maybe theaters or some sort of diversification for a while. And he also said like that's with a lot of it is going to say you've big production studios, say particularly in the UK like Brady, where maybe Take That or Mark Knopfler or whoever will go and do 2 weeks full production rehearsal where they'll set up and they'll produce and they'll run the gig with the full light, full sound, and then they go on tour. What's happening, starting up over there, but now is that these places are getting set up for concerts.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and that there's areas where it might be sponsored. I don't know by Amazon, by Netflix, by whoever, by Google, or whatever. But it's slightly trending that way now for the big tours that they literally whoever is going to live on TV or whatever.
So they're getting set up for a streaming concert, like for an online concert or such.
That's the sort of the word anyway. For look, this is all for a few people, and other people are doing it from the front room, and other people are different mediums of how to entertain are coming up.
I suppose it is all about exploring, like in any industry, it's about exploring new ways of generating some income, I suppose, really, isn't it?
We have the technology here. We are talking like I've been working from home, but you have for a while in terms of you're able to technically do very, very, very good stuff musically, sound wise, and collaborate with people, from different, like say a country music producer a few weeks ago, which I do quite regularly, send me stuff and I put down all the guitars.
Brilliant.
Sent it back. Another guy from Celtic Woman sent me stuff, and you do the stuff, and technology allows you to do that. So that's been around for a while, but there is more mediums of exploration, like live shows in your front room and stuff that are coming together. I personally think it's good, and if it works, it's good, but you don't get the full perception unless you're in the room and you feel the temperature of it. You see, so that is always going to be the full experience of you can get a certain amount of estimation of it.
Yeah, it's the excitement, it's the exchange in the room between audience and musician or whatever. Yeah.
And also the audience in the room agreeing this is great, and you're all working it up together. You don't get that at home. You get a certain amount of it at home, and it's really good, and I think it's good that this has all been looked at and done now. But look, the ultimate thing will be the experience of life, in theatre.
Yeah, I mean that's happening. You see it. I think it's a number. I think the Abbey are doing it actually. They're doing again online productions and stuff. But to your point, it's not the same. I suppose it's at the moment it's as good as it can be, and it's good for the soul. It's a bit of a salve or whatever. But it's just never going to be the same, is it? As going out and getting in there in a room with people.
Yeah, I think what's interesting for me, what's interesting is I'm not as much interested in watching concerts like this or
Mm,
watching gigs. It doesn't quite do it for me.
sure,
For not, it's that's my personal taste. But what I do like is there's been some great guys doing some sort of like technical type things or educational type things, and
okay,
in this way at this time, and I find that a little bit more interesting. Do you know
sure,
where you're getting a little bit of how they work or what techniques they use and stuff that and again, like I'm sure like there's chefs doing it. There's where you're
sure.
getting a little bit of why they're what they
It's
are, and do
it's
you know what I mean?
it's
And
it's
that
that up close kind of an insight almost, and a bit a sense
yeah.
of their personality and how they do a thing. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and that definitely, if someone I'm interested comes down and says, "Oh, I'll just make a note just to check it out, whether
Sure.
for 5 minutes or if I really like it, I'll stay the course a little bit." So stuff like that is when the right stuff to me is interesting, where you're actually genuinely learning a good technique that you want to learn.
Sure, sure. I mean, in terms of again, just to go back to, I hate using the word the plight of musicians because we're all in the same boat,
Yeah,
regardless of industry in a sense. But like government, subsidy payments and things like that, that have gone across the board in one sense. A lot of musicians seem to be struggling to get those, or they're not entitled to all the stuff that's what I'm reading anyway. It's depending on whether you're working on a particular day in the year and things like that. It's a bit more of a struggle for say some musicians, some professional musicians to get access to these funds. Are you hearing anything within the industry in that regard? Or?
yeah. There has been sort of initiatives from the Arts Council
Mm,
uh, and the different people have come together, like IMRO
mm,
and PPI and IRMA all came together and raised funds, and then Spotify matched what IMRO put in, and IMRO were great on the whole thing. And then it was administered by, was it not the Arts Council? Another government body. And I look, the thing is you wouldn't want to be too dependent on it. Maybe it's the sheer volume of people. It's that would need
mm,
to cover, and how long will this last? It's not going to handle the problem. It's
sure,
not going to handle the drought. It's not,
sure,
and it was a great effort. And then I should have my facts in this now. There was another scheme as well. Oh, where the Arts Council, you could put in a pitch for if to get a grant for
sure,
creating whether a piece of music or a piece of painting or and if it had merit. But like there's a lot of people will go for these things and want these things, and there's the money isn't there,
sure.
or it hasn't been put forward to really
Yeah,
make, and I think a fraction of the people that apply get it, basically, and that's it.
yeah,
So I think by all means apply, but I wouldn't sit at home waiting for it.
sure. And again, I suppose I think that a lot of to use the phrase lay people or people who are not musicians. That's you know what I mean.
Yeah,
The importance of the live thing. Just to go back to that again at the moment,
yeah,
because digital streaming and online record sales and album sales, they just don't generate the money that they did once upon a time. So a lot of even the bigger acts would have had to go back to the touring schedule because they're the money they generate from the concerts plus the merchandising and all that
yeah.
and that is all gone.
That's right. Now, live for the last 5-6 years, say at least, has been the big money
Mm,
thing. That's the only way of making money for acts, and that is gone. So that streaming has come up a little bit in the last few months because more people are now time to what that means isn't going to make up for the lack of life.
sure,
Uh, I think from a government point of view, it would be very, very silly for the government not to really help this industry,
sure.
because I've always said like that the arts and the music has made Ireland
Mm-hmm.
more interesting as a place, more sellable abroad. It's
Sure.
been our PR machine to a big degree, mainly the music and the arts around the world, you know. So I think the governments are very, very silly if they don't spend time in engineering. Well, how do we get this industry back? How do we get confidence into it? How do we make sure that people decide not to jump out of this industry?
Sure.
Every industry needs the best of people.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got people coming up the ranks that are, hitting their working years in their 20s, whatever, and they're looking at this, but there's nothing here for me. I'm just going to go up and be a whatever. That's a loss. So it is an industry that needs to be planned and thought out and supported. I personally think the best support, it's great to get subsidies, and if you get it, that's great. But I do think support is a better thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, help venues open up when they can.
Sure.
Take into consideration, acknowledge that there is backroom staff in the gay theatre that literally probably have their whole program for this year gone. Take into account that there was probably a show going into the gay theatre in October for 2 weeks that now can't get in, but also can't get in next year because there's another show in. Like these theatre things,
Sure.
they work, and that's just one, So I think the government, the Arts and Minister for Arts and Gaelic should really look at this. I do think that the sparkle in Irish society, the whole colour, the whole thing that makes things a little bit more interesting is the fact that we've got good artists and good output, and that's across everything from the media, from all mediums, from poetry to paintings to you can get into food as an art, but that sort of little bit of colour is the thing. And if you concentrate solely on commerce, and if you it's the arts is a harder thing to quantify, but it is there. And if you just look at the figures, it's a very, very big industry, and it's a growing industry in that, I mean, so that's my thing.
Yeah, no, it makes total. I mean, it runs, to your point, it runs deeper than just commerce. It's good for the mind, it's good for the soul, especially at times like this, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, all these big things, like whether it's U2 or the big things that have traveled the world, probably they might be the reason why maybe one person says, "Oh, I must visit Ireland," and that's a result.
Sure.
So back to your thing. Like every industry, the music industry, say, is definitely on its knees, and all the government, what I think the government should do is just literally help get it on its feet. Work with the different bodies, work with art, just keep an eye on it. I think just help, bring something to water as opposed subsidies all the time, because that can become, you'll see that can become a little bit, well, as long as I'm getting this, I don't have to do anything. You need to make people a little bit more able in this new era that we're going to face.
It's facilitating it and helping you to go forward as opposed to just keeping it ticking over. Yeah, for sure.
Totally. Yeah.
So 12 months time, May of 2021, and we're having this conversation again. What would you like to be saying to me in terms of what you're about to do? I might be talking to you from a hotel room in Japan. You may well be on tour by then. What do you think?
Yeah. Okay. So everything this year has been put back pretty much 12 months back. So this time next year, I hope to do these concerts in Japan, where what's going on now is a thing of the past, where the confidence is for people to have a drink in the lobby, to go in and sit down in the concert or whatever, and that this is a thing of the past. Like the other thing for all of this is the lingering factor. Like, we're putting up with a lot of pain now, all of us.
Sure.
We're shut down. It would be great that the result of this shutdown is that the thing is totally handled. What would be a shame is that this is a lingering thing, that in a year's time these gigs get pulled again because, well, we can only get 500 people in as opposed to 1,000 people.
Yes.
Or people aren't going up because the confidence isn't there. So I think it has to be very bang, bang, bang. Listen, we are doing the work now. We are making all the sacrifice and cleaning our hands and keep clean and staying safe and all that. So hopefully it'll be just bang. Okay, look, to a big degree, we're back at it in a year's time.
Brilliant.
And do you know what I mean? And even then, it's tough for everyone. Like even before this, commerce and economics of everyone's business was tough. It's expensive to live. It's expensive to whatever. So even that is tough. So that's
great. Listen, thanks for talking to us, Bill. It's very much appreciated. Stay safe, mind yourselves, keep producing the music, and we'll talk to you in person sooner than later, I hope.
Thanks very, very much, Niall, and best of luck to you, okay?
This week's musical segment is very interesting. It's Mary Black with the aforementioned Bill Shanley and Nicky Scott performing a piece called Better Times Will Come. It's part of a project organised by singer-songwriter Janis Ian. It's for charity. It's for the Pearl Foundation in the States and Women's Aid in Ireland. All recorded remotely. Enjoy it.
Better times will come. Oh, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one. Oh, better times will come. When we greet each dawn without fear, knowing loved ones soon will be near. When the winds of war cannot blow anymore, oh, better times will come. Better times will come. Oh, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. When we live each day as our last, we know someday soon it will pass. We will dance, we will sing in that never-ending spring. Oh, better times will come. Better times will come. Oh, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come.
Thank you for listening to the Southern Star Coronavirus podcast. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our podcast, which is available now on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Acast, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Better times will come. Oh, better times will come.